How you doing? Hope everything's going well on your end. Today, I wanted to sit down and talk through the latest update for Monster Hunter Wilds, specifically the hotfix version 1.03.020 that dropped right after the big title update 3 and the Final Fantasy XIV crossover content. Now, I know most of us were already hyped up from seeing Omega Planetes show up in the game and experiencing all those crossover mechanics, but right after the main content patch rolled out, Capcom pushed a smaller update to clean up some of the rough edges. That's what I want to break down for you in detail today, and not just list the patch notes, but also explain why they matter, how they affect your hunts, and what kind of impact you might feel the next time you boot up the game. So first things first, let's put the timing into perspective. Title Update 3 dropped on September 29th, 2025, which was huge because it brought the long-awaited collaboration with Final Fantasy XIV. We got Omega Planetes as a boss fight, we saw crossover cosmetics, new quests, and a whole set of mechanics related to enmity, something Final Fantasy players are very familiar with. But as with almost any major content drop, a few bugs managed to sneak their way in. That's where Update 1.03.020 comes in, which was released the very next day, September 30th, 2025. So, if you're seeing that number pop up in your update history, and wondering why your console or PC prompted another download immediately after the hype patch, that's the reason. One of the most important things this hotfix tackled has to do with enmity interactions and the way skills like Agitator were working in hunts. In the original release of Title Update 3, there was a weird bug where if you pulled enmity from Omega Planetes, Agitator and certain other skills would deactivate incorrectly. For players who spent hours carefully building their armor sets around skill synergy, this was a huge frustration. Imagine going in, pulling hate like you're supposed to, and suddenly your carefully calculated buff setup just shuts down mid-fight. Not only was it immersion breaking, it was mechanically punishing because you'd lose your attack and affinity boost for no good reason. Capcom fixed that, so now Agitator stays active properly while managing enmity, which is exactly how the skill should behave. Another major fix had to do with monster behavior after mounted attacks. There was a nasty bug where Omega Planets, or even the Sacred, would refuse to move to a new area after you performed certain mounted attacks. If you've ever had this happen, you know it could make quests essentially unwinnable because monsters weren't following their scripted relocation paths. In practical terms, that meant hunts could soft lock or take way longer than intended. This hotfix ensures those transitions now work properly, which is going to save hunters a lot of frustration during high-stakes quests. Then there's the issue with Lagiacrus, and honestly, this one is kind of funny because Lagiacrus showing up where it wasn't supposed to made some people's hunts more exciting than they expected. But it was definitely not intended design. The bug caused Lagiacrus to appear prematurely at Wounded Hollow before players had properly reached that stage of progression. That broke quest flow and could cause balancing issues, so this hotfix removed the accidental spawn. Lagiacrus is still there for when you're meant to face it, just not popping up ahead of schedule anymore. Graphical issues also got addressed, including a very noticeable one with Omega Planetes' Rocket Punch. Some players saw the Rocket Punch visual effect sticking around awkwardly even after the move was finished, like a ghostly fist just hanging there in the arena. That's been patched out now, so the animation resolves correctly and you won't see lingering effects cluttering the screen. Endemic life filtering got some love too. There was a bug where filter icons would show creatures like the Cactuar even in locations where they weren't actually present. It might sound minor compared to combat fixes, but for players who love exploring, collecting, or completing their endemic life compendiums, seeing misleading icons was confusing. Now the filter behaves accurately and only displays the creatures you can realistically encounter in the current locale. For bow users, this hotfix fixed something that really mattered in combat flow. Before the patch, there were times when applying coatings while charging a bow simply wouldn't register. You'd line up your shot, try to switch coatings mid-charge, and the system would just ignore the action, leaving you with a shot that wasn't buffed the way you intended. That's been corrected, so coatings apply properly even while charging, which brings the weapon back to feeling smooth and reliable. Now, even though this hotfix solved a handful of things, Capcom did acknowledge that one issue still remains unresolved. On PlayStation 5, cosmetic DLC pass text doesn't display correctly in the claim content menu at the support desk. That's purely a visual UI problem, but for players who bought cosmetic passes and want to check their content, it's still annoying. Capcom says it's on their radar for a future fix, but it didn't make it into this hotfix. So if you're a PS5 player still scratching your head at that menu, just know it's not you, it's the game. So when we step back and think about what this patch really represents, it's Capcom cleaning up the aftermath of a massive content drop. Big patches always come with the risk of hidden issues, especially when introducing crossover mechanics like enmity that the Monster Hunter series hasn't traditionally dealt with. Bringing in ideas from another franchise always adds complexity, and while Omega Planets was a thrilling addition, it was also inevitable that something would slip through. Thankfully, Capcom pushed this hotfix out quickly, within 24 hours, which shows they were paying attention to feedback and crash reports right away. From a player's perspective, what you're going to notice most is smoother hunts against Omega Planetes. You won't lose Agitator when pulling Enmity, you won't have to restart because the monster froze in place, and visually the fight should look cleaner without stray rocket punch effects lingering around. Bowmains are also going to feel a difference immediately because the coding fix restores a natural flow to their combat style. For most hunters, these changes don't drastically shift gameplay balance, but they remove friction points that could ruin what should be an epic encounter. The release timing is also worth appreciating. When a studio delivers a crossover of this scale, sometimes players expect weeks or even months before bugs get cleaned up. Here, Capcom moved fast, signaling that they want the FF15 collaboration to shine without distractions. Considering how much work went into modeling Omega Planetas, building its enmity mechanic, and balancing the fight for Monster Hunter's systems, having a hotfix out almost immediately shows a lot of commitment. And if we think about the player base, this hotfix matters because it protects the first impressions of that crossover. For a lot of hunters, this is their first time experiencing something that feels like Final Fantasy XIV inside Monster Hunter Wilds. If that introduction had been plagued with broken skills and monsters that refused to relocate, the collaboration would have left a sour taste. Instead, Capcom swooped in quickly to smooth out the rough edges, so now people can focus on the excitement of the content rather than the frustration of the bugs. Looking ahead, it's safe to expect that Capcom will continue monitoring feedback closely. The mention of the unresolved PS5 cosmetic pass issue shows that they're aware not everything is polished yet, but they're tackling the most game-breaking problems first. So if you're worried about smaller UI or cosmetic quirks, those will probably get patched in another minor update down the line. When we break this down into the bigger picture of Monster Hunter Wilds' ongoing support, it's interesting to see how the devs are balancing both major content drops and these quick, reactive updates. TU3 was a massive injection of content that kept the community buzzing, and now this hotfix makes sure that content runs smoothly. It's a good sign for the long-term life of the game, because it suggests that not only are we going to keep getting new monsters, events, and collaborations, but also that the dev team is ready to respond within days when something goes wrong. That's the kind of support cycle that makes a lab game thrive for years. If you've already jumped into the FFXIV collaboration content, I'd love to know if you noticed any of the bugs before this hotfix. Did you have Agitator drop out mid-hunt? Did you see Lagiacrus in a place it shouldn't have been? Or maybe you ran into that rocket punch glitch and thought it was some weird intended effect. Sometimes these bugs can almost feel like features until the devs clarify otherwise. Either way, now you can go back into the game with fewer headaches and more confidence that your gear and strategies will perform the way you designed them to.